Hey guys, the Explorer of Horror here, Horrorboy465, and today we're talking about Creep 2. Now, Creep 2 came out in 2017, it's a 6.4 on IMDb, directed by Patrick Brice, the same director as the first film, and of course, I had reviewed the first movie a couple days ago, so I figured I might as well as shoot this review right now and get this video up for you guys. And tonight's going to be all about making videos and making projects and hopefully making stuff that I can upload in the next few days. I'm not too sure how many more videos I'm going to be making tonight, but that's basically the main goal tonight, is to try and make as many videos as I can. And then I'll edit them and upload them, progressively. But Creep 2, honestly, is probably a step from the first movie. I definitely thought the movie nailed a lot more stuff in it. It became much more of its own thing. And yeah, it's one of those very rare instances that the sequel is actually a lot better than the first movie. And the first Creep is a great movie. I think it's a great horror film. But this is a pretty freaking awesome horror film. If you haven't seen the Creep series yet, go on Netflix. They're very short films. They're about an hour and 18 minutes apiece. They're about an hour and 15 minutes, take out the credits, and take out the logos and everything. It'd probably be around an hour and 14 minutes. You guys can take an hour and 14 minutes to watch these movies. Not probably an hour and 15 minutes total. It'd be about the length of probably a Marvel movie if you watch this and the first movie. But honestly, it's worth it. They're very good films. They got pretty decent ratings on IMDb. So I'm glad that people, really do enjoy the films. They're definitely one of the better, independent horror films I've seen in a while. And these movies were kind of made totally just out of nowhere. I know that either director Patrick Brice and actor Mark Duplass pretty much shot the first movie kind of as they went on. It started off as a traditional filmmaking process, and then as they got more and more into the filmmaking, they were able to screen it and get reaction from the crowds, and pretty much the audience is what made the first movie. The audience wanted to be creepier and scarier, and thus made it ultimately just awesome movie. And I love that, because how many horror films do that anymore? How many horror films will literally just say, you know what, let's let the audience guide this film? There's not been many horror films to do that. Now, as far as Creep 2 goes, I don't know if that was the same process, but because they'd already established a storyline. But I know the first movie was pretty much, it starred two people, it was made by two people, and very rarely are horror films done that way anymore and done successfully. Most of the time when you get horror films like that, they kind of fall under the radar, and they don't get noticed that much, and they don't get much praise. But this is one of those very few film franchises that can manage to do that can manage to pull in the support and the views, or not really the views, but at least get decent popularity, and also just generally be good, like really good films. And Creep 2, I think, does a lot of things even better than the first movie. It improves a lot of stuff. There was not really any problems I had with the first movie. It was a pretty straightforward horror film. This one's a pretty awesome sequel. This one takes things and explores even more. Get to see a little bit more into the mind of the killer. We get to see a little bit more of interesting characters in this film. Very interesting storyline. I like the concept. I like the fact that this one's a little bit more bloodier than the first movie. It's a little bit more visceral. It's definitely a little bit more intense than the first movie. You get into the mind of the killer a lot more in this film. And then this movie, in the first movie, it was more of like the fear of being stalked and killed. Like the fear of somebody watching you when you don't know. You call the cops, they don't help you out because you don't know who this person is. You don't know their name, their address, so police can't help you out. And he's sending you VHS tapes in the mail. Like, that's a creepy idea. This movie is more about, okay, we know that, that's great, but let's go in this guy's mind. Let's see what functions in this guy's head. And it kind of explains some of the questions you have while watching the first movie. Where you get the wolf mask from, or why does he have such an obsession with wolves, which they kind of explain in the first movie, but this movie they kind of go a little bit more into it. The psyche part, getting into his mind, that's a very heavy focus in this movie. and also getting a victim in this movie that this killer has never encountered before. Most of his victims kind of get scared and, run away, but in this movie it's a little bit more different. And by the way, this is a newer film. I just want to say this will be a spoiler review. There will be spoilers in this video. If you haven't seen the Creep series, I recommend that you watch them both and then come back to the review so you guys won't get anything spoiled for you guys. But anyways, let's continue with the review. The movie is pretty much about, it's right after the first movie, and to begin the movie you have this guy who's actually the guy from, it's Karen Sony, the guy from Deadpool, the taxi driver from Deadpool. He's been in a lot of movies as well, not just Deadpool. I've seen him in plenty of newer movies as well. But Karen Sony, he's pretty much become a big name in Hollywood right now. He's starting to get a lot of roles in films and stuff. And he has like a little role in here, and I was like, hey, that's pretty cool. That guy's from the Deadpool films. And he pretty much is getting the same thing that happened in the first movie, letters in the mail, packages. Opens it up, there's a little wolf thing inside of it, like the first movie. Only this one has a camera inside of it, and the way this scene is built up is very intense because you can tell that him and Mark Duplass are friends, and then Mark Duplass just goes, "You're not going to like what I'm going to say to you." And then it is the way that everything unfolds out in that scene where ultimately Mark Duplass kills the guy in a very just simple way, just a slit the throat, but the way that it's done is very just brutal because Mark Duplass is kind of like, he just kind of shrugs it off. He's like, nah. He's like, I'm getting really old. And he's like, just sitting there talking to himself. It's a very creepy scene. And as the movie goes on, you have this internet show. I think what was it called? I can't remember what it was called. I really can't. What was that? What was that show called? It's gonna drive me crazy. It's this girl. She's running an internet show, and it's for a YouTube type thing, but it's not really YouTube because you can show like you can have cursing in it, which you can curse on YouTube, but it's a lot more uncensored than YouTube, but it's like this movie's own version of YouTube. I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called Encounters. Yeah, I think it's called Encounters. So she's running this show where she does Craigslist ads, and she kind of documents her encounters. You have a lot of like really weird stuff in the beginning of the movie where she's going to people who maybe want to hug for an hour, or one of them where it's like a mothering job where she has to sit and let this guy be like a baby as she rocks him and sings him like a lullaby. It's kind of weird because it explores that weirder side of the internet, how there really is people out there like that, who, there definitely is a really strange side of the internet. And I like how it kind of, it adds it on to the film. I like that. And she's basically doing this show, and she is only going to be able to do one season because the views aren't that great on it until she gets the message from our lead character, the Creep, or Mark Duplass, but pretty much Creep. This movie's called Creep. He's pretty much the Creep. And he pretty much asked her to if she has a video camera. She says yes, and he is going to pay like $1,000 in one day for her to come out and document his life. And it's pretty similar to the first movie. She goes out there, and Mark Duplass, very well done dialogue. And Mark Duplass, of course, I think he was known for The League, and he's been involved with projects here and there. I've seen him a couple times. I don't know if he's like he is a director. He directed a movie called Baghead, which I have heard of that movie. Yeah, I've heard of Baghead. I think I've heard of Baghead. I'm not too sure. I can't remember. But he's also like a producer, a writer, a director, an actor. So this guy does a lot of stuff. I think in this movie, his performance in the first movie is really awesome. But here, he knocks the ball out of the park. And the ball goes. And it goes for thousands upon thousands of miles. That's how awesome his performance is in this movie. He takes this character and really takes his madness so far. Mark Duplass really does play his character brilliantly. I think he does a great job as his character in the film. And it's kind of funny because in the last movie, the lead character was Aaron, who was being stalked. And this movie, Mark Duplass's character's name is Aaron because we don't know his real name because he always gives out fake names. And when the girl gets there, pretty much from there on, Aaron or Joseph or Mark Duplass, whatever you want to, the creep, I'm just going to call him that, the creep, he begins acting weird, trying to jump scare her, but it doesn't scare her. He's talking about how, if we want to be comfortable around each other, we have to get naked so that we cannot have any distractions. So what does he do? He freaking strips down naked, and it's the most awkward scene too because it's a full frontal nudity scene. So you see everything. It's like a 30-second scene. It's like, man, could you just go into the next scene, man? So it's a very cringy scene. And then he's like, well, in order for us to break our barrier, you got to get dressed. You got to get undressed too. And she just does it, undresses. I'm like, oh, thank goodness we get a full frontal of that too. So I was like, oh, thank goodness. And she does it. And they kind of go on from there. She's documenting him. He's acting very weird. Wears a wolf mask, the peach fuzz mask from the previous film. He is basically making, instead of in the first movie where it's about him making this film for his, son, in this one he's making kind of his last movie. This is the last movie from him because talking about how he hit his 40s, he's starting to get gray hair. In this movie he looks a little bit different. His hair's all grown out, has a beard. And he's pretty much where he admits that he's a killer to her as soon as he meets her. He's like, I'm a serial killer. This is my day-to-day thing. I'm getting really old, and I was just wanting to see if you could document me. So in this movie, it's kind of like he's a killer, but he's kind of a retired killer. He doesn't have that will to kill anymore. He's just like kind of done with it. So she just goes along with it. And at first, I was kind of like, well, does she not believe him, or does she just not care? But you found that she just doesn't believe that he's actually a killer. And as the movie goes on, they're filming scene by scene, and she's like, she gets questioned by him, and he's like, do you really think I'm a killer? And she's like, no, because you wouldn't have me document you if you were an actual killer. He's like, yes, but I'm not going to be alive by the end of the night. So they pretty much have this crazy segment where he sees if she would be willing to save his life. Because he acts like he hung himself, but he actually has like a vest, like a safety vest, safety harness, so that he's not going to get killed. And pretty much from there on, they're shooting these scenes, and then she finally realizes, like, hey, this guy is really crazy, and this guy's really a killer. And by that point, it's pretty much, they're out in the middle of the woods, he's digging this grave, and he ends up stabbing her, thinks he killed her, and then she gets up and surprisingly hits him across the head with the shovel and runs away. And then the end of the movie is pretty cool too, where you have like a shot of him following her with the camera, and then he kind of has his whistle that he does. It's kind of his, I guess, kind of his signature thing that he does. And he's like walking this train, like stalking her, and she looks, and the movie kind of ends. So the movie is actually very well done. It's very well shot for being a found footage movie. It's definitely way better than your typical found footage movie. This is like, honestly, one of my favorite found footage movies. This and Creep 1 and Wreck and Blair Witch and Paranormal Activity 1. These are all really good found footage films. Tunnel, Quarantine. Those are all really, really good found footage movies to me. It's shot very well, not a lot of shaky cam. It's not going to give you motion sickness or anything like that. It's not going to make you like get dizzy or anything like that. The characters are very well done. They're very well acted. The cast did a great job. You have a lot of blood and gore in this movie. More intensity in the first movie, more creepiness in the first movie. You get into the mind of the killer a lot more. It's definitely more psychological. So yeah, I mean, and also in this movie, once again, you don't have any music, which really helps. It really helps the atmosphere. The audio is great. These like great sound effects and everything like that. These great scenes that kind of reveal clues about the killer and how maybe he was almost killed when he was a kid, and the killer that tried to kill him failed, so he killed the killer and somehow got the killer instinct. They explore stuff like that in this film. So if you're wanting to learn more information about the killer that you're kind of curious about in the first movie, you didn't really know about, in this movie they explain a lot more. And pretty much the movie is actually very good. It's a very well done sequel. I definitely really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great film. Very short film, fast paced, so it has a lot of stuff going for it. So if you guys want to check out these movies, they're very good, very short, and they're definitely high quality horror films, and definitely high quality horror found footage films. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching my reviews on the Creep films. They're good little horror films. I figure I'd do reviews on them because I really enjoyed them. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the reviews, and I'll see you guys in the next review. The Explorer of Horror is out. See you guys later.